Unlimited Love is the new album from the band, the legendary band, the icons, the Head Rod Billy Sheppers. This is their 12th album, or I guess 12th, 2 5s, 1 2. 12th studio album for the band. They've been together for almost 40 years now, which is kind of amazing. Of course, there have been different lineup changes throughout the years. The 4 members that are there now have not always been there, namely John Frusciante, who is back with this album. A very, I think, anticipated just thing with this new release is the fact that John is back. He left the band originally in 2009. Well, actually originally, oh gosh, this kind of dates back a while now. He was with them for a few years, from roughly 1988 through 1992. Then he left, came back in 98, stayed there until 2009, and now he's back again. It's his second time back, his third stint with the band, which I think is really exciting. That's definitely good news for the music world, for the rock world, for the Chili Peppers, obviously, as a band. It's good to have him back. I think most of us would agree that he's definitely the best lead guitarist they have had in their tenure as a group. I personally am not a huge Red Hot Chili Peppers fan myself. I have liked several of their songs over the years. I definitely wouldn't say I dislike the band. I do think they are a good band. They're a solid band. They have some songs that I like. They're just not one of my personal favorites. So for that reason, I wasn't that excited for this album. I wasn't dreading it by any means, although admittedly I kind of was when I saw that it's 73 minutes long. And it's not that that's even a long running time for an album. There are several albums that I love that are some of my favorites of all time that are even longer than that. But it's the fact that it's the Red Hot Chili Peppers, a band that has diversity, but just not enough of it, I think, to make an album over an hour long and keep it consistently interesting throughout. I really think that an hour should have been like the maximum running time for this thing. But I'm definitely getting ahead of myself with my thoughts, my different varying thoughts on the record. I think it gets off to a pretty good start with the first track, Black Summer. This was a single, the lead single leading up to this release. And it goes into some interesting topics, talking about all of the different forest fires, wildfires that happened in Australia a few years back. Flea is apparently of Australian descent, so that, I think, gives it some added weight coming from him. It's pretty chill, mellow cuts on the album. I like the solo that John provides in the midst of it. It's pretty cool. And I like how the song sort of fades out after the bridge. It sounds like it's just about to end kind of abruptly, but then comes right back in the chorus, all loud in your face. It was a cool switch up, I think. Aquatic Mouth Dance is, first of all, a very funny title. I don't know how they came up with that, but it's an interesting track. It's definitely one that feels like Anthony Kiedis, the singer, was one of the main writers here. He's talking about different things about his upbringing before the band, maybe even in the midst of the band, but just sort of before they achieve success. And a neat instrumental as well. We hear this very funky bass riff from Flea, which we are all very accustomed to hearing, even some orchestral instruments in the mix as well. Not the One is a very basic song lyrically, just about the struggles of a relationship, trying to overcome these struggles. Very cookie cutter. We've heard this 1,000 different times. But I do really like the sound of this track. The very spacey, stretched out guitar leads, the piano that plays throughout the song. Anthony's vocals, I think, are pretty solid. It's a neat, almost kind of trance-like instrumental, very peaceful sounding that I think pays dividend by the end of the track. The track Poster Child has an absolute heap of various pop culture references, mostly music-based, referring to different artists, bands, but even actual arts like the Mona Lisa, and even Taco Bell. I mean, you can't leave Taco Bell out if you're talking about popular culture, come on. However, I'm not too into this track personally. I think that the melody that Anthony is delivering gets very old after a couple of lines. It really outstays its welcome. The song is ultimately about fame embracing the spotlights, which, I mean, could be somewhat compelling, but I really don't feel like they're able to pull it off that well here. It, to me, kind of just feels like a poor man's "we didn't start the fire." Great Apes also has some kind of weird, confusing, and questionable lines, like in the chorus, "I just want the great apes to be free." Great apes, Anthony said, that is a reference to people, to human beings. Come on now, you lazy cowboy, heads or tails, but not right now, boy. What the hell does that mean? What is up with the cowboy reference? The following track, It's Only Natural, I would pretty much just copy and paste everything I said about Not the One to this track here. Very stereotypical concept, something we've all heard in several songs before, but a cool sounding song that I think definitely gives it the benefit of the doubt. I, in particular, really like Chad Smith's very smooth, steady going drums that play throughout the track. These Are the Ways has a couple of cool changes throughout the song, mainly just from the verses to the chorus. It builds a lot of momentum, it gets louder. It's definitely one of the heavier sounding tracks on the album, I would say. You know, it's definitely inoffensive and not awful, but my goodness, this sounds exactly like the Foo Fighters. I can't be the only one that thinks that. If you listen to this song and you just replace Anthony Kiedis' vocals with Dave Grohl's voice, would you know the difference? You could put it on any Foo Fighters record and it would sound just like any other song on one of their albums. And if you guys have been following my channel, then you know by now that I'm very familiar with Foo Fighters catalog. So I, more than a lot of other people, would not be able to mistake the Foo Fighters' typical sound. What You Thinkin' is a song with an interesting topic that touches on the mistreatment of Native Americans in America, and I think this is made to be even more compelling because Anthony Kiedis has Native American ancestry, kind of like with the Black Summer being about Australian forest fires and flee from Australia. It's a similar situation, I would say. I absolutely love the bass riff in the song. It is so freaking catchy. Boom, 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 boom. And the chorus is pretty cool too. It definitely grew on me a bit. It was a little off-putting, my initial listen, just because it's such a departure from the aesthetic of the rest of the song. But after enough times listening to the song and just listening through the song, it definitely gets better and definitely grew on me. I guess it might not be that way for everyone. No one. Bastards of Life has the use of a synth, which is kind of weird to hear from the Red Hot Chili Peppers. You don't really expect lots of keyboard instruments from them. Cool though, it's a cool implementation into the track at the beginning, and I like the use of the acoustic guitar in the chorus as well as a slide guitar playing little notes sort of in between lines. This is again though another song with some very confusing lines like everyone that's here is someone, everyone I swear is someone's daughter. I just don't understand what that means at all. And a pretty cringy bridge as well where the vocals get a little bit fuzzier, the rest of the instrumental gets a little bit louder and in your face, and I mean you can tell that the band just thought they were being so badass at this part, and it just does not work at all for me. White Braids and Pillow Chair I think has a kind of sweet sentiment and a sweet backstory to it. Anthony Kiedis said he was in a coffee shop and saw this couple and was just kind of taken by their general vibe. And he just felt so inspired to write a song about this couple, and that's a sweet story. Oddly ironic though, because the rest of the song sounds just like a coffee shop rock song that you would hear in a coffee shop. One Way Traffic I think is a pretty cool jam. It has somewhat of a comical concept where it seems like Anthony is in a car with another person and they're stuck in this big traffic jam, and they're kind of just talking about nonsense, trying to get through the traffic. It's kind of funny though, and I like how it's sort of a spoken word. A pretty cool bridge as well that takes kind of a psychedelic turn. It gets a little bit slower and then just breaks right back into its sort of normal pace in the next verse. Veronica is yet another track on this album that has various different changes and transitions between verses relative to its tempo or to its dynamics. I think that's something that the album really does consistently very well. I like the watery guitar tone that John utilizes here, and the track has a pretty dark and kind of menacing closing to it. It reminds me very much of the song I Want You off of the Beatles' Abbey Road. And speaking of John, we hear him on the chorus of the track The Heavy Wing, and this is easily my favorite part of this song. I like the sound of his vocals here. It's the most exciting part of the track because the rest of the track is unfortunately pretty boring and kind of lifeless. Well, hi guys, I am back from the future, I guess you could say. My camera died. I don't know, one of those things that just happens, and I just wasn't able to continue filming. So I'm back now a few days later. I had only one more track to talk about on this album. That was the track Tangelo, which is what closes out the album. And I think it's actually a real highlight off of the album. Pretty dark song, a pretty sad song too. Anthony talks about his past struggles with drug addiction, with depression as well. Some dark lines too, like he says, the smile of a knife is seldom befriending, or later he says, but December came strong, the mending went wrong, sort of talking about like when cold weather comes, that kind of ignites his depression. I think it's a really good closer to the album. The album as a whole was, well, first of all, I'm kind of just trying to remember like certain things I wanted to say. I know that on the whole, I thought the album was just okay. It was kind of a mild effort for the band. I'm overall feeling a C+ on this album. I know to some of you guys watching that might seem like kind of a harsh grade to give it based off of my mostly positive things I've said up to this point, but there are actually a number of tracks I didn't even talk about on here, just because I had nothing to say about them, no really input to come up with those tracks. You know, sometimes that's just how it is with albums. There are some songs I just have no real comment to make on them. The track listing overall, I would say, was just a bit hit or miss. I like some of the ideas and concepts that they touched on. Funny enough, I think my favorite tracks off this album are kind of all the ones that sounded least like Red Hot Chili Peppers, because surprisingly there were a number of songs that were a little bit different from the normal sound, and I liked that. I liked that they kind of experimented, but for the most part it did kind of just sound like a new album from the Red Hot Chili Peppers, what you would expect a new one from them to sound like, which was a little bit better than I thought it would be. Still, on the whole, just kind of a okay album. But of course, what do you guys think of this album? If you've heard it, what are some of your favorite tracks? You know the drill. And yeah, that's all I got for you guys. This is probably going to be out a lot later than I want it to be, because I have some stuff coming up that's going to keep me busy, some stuff I got to prioritize over YouTube. So I'm sorry that this is kind of getting out late. I'm already kind of late getting to the album, but just want to apologize for that. But thank you all for watching, and I'll see you all later. Peace out.